In this video, you will learn about two essential things. First, how to get subscription data from Stripe from your data warehouse into Mixpanel. This is already exciting enough, but we add something more. Second of all, how you can create a dashboard tree in Mixpanel to show the core metrics in Mixpanel to your different kind of stakeholders. We have a lot to cover. Let's get into it. This video is sponsored by Mixpanel. Mixpanel has a new way to do product analytics with your warehouse data. You can connect Mixpanel to your data warehouse, and then you can run all the product analytics investigations and all the product analytics deep dives on top of your data warehouse data with clean, prepared, and high quality data. Check out the link in the description to learn more about the offering. I'm using it and I'm extremely happy to have this new kind of setup for product analytics because it unlocks so many more use cases on top of much better data than before. Let's start with a short recap. In the first episode, I showed what we want to achieve in this whole series. What we want to achieve is we want to create a data set that combines Stripe data, our subscription data, as events, and then our product data, which we already have in Mixpanel, so that we can combine both to do sequence analysis with it, so that we can really understand how people act first with the product and then end up with the subscription to get additional insights from data. The benefit on the way is, because we integrate now the Stripe data into Mixpanel, that we can create an aligned dashboard and reporting for everyone in Mixpanel, combining the subscription data and also the product data. Something that usually you often do the other way around, so you pull the Mixpanel data into data warehouse and create the reporting there. Today, the first step is we need to get the data warehouse data where we already prepared the data in the last episode. We now have to sync it up into Mixpanel. And so we will start there, and then we will hop over to Mixpanel, and I will show you how the data lands and then how we can work with it to create a very simplistic dashboard tree as a first step so that you can understand what you can enable by using dashboard trees. We can start with a quick recap what we did in the last episode. I link it here so you can watch if you haven't watched this episode before, because here I explain how I create this kind of data model that in the end allows us to take Stripe data that has been loaded by Fivetran and to eventify it, so derive events out of the data and then prepare the data so that we can sync it up into Mixpanel. This is basically like the models where we ended up. Here we, for example, get the subscription created data, and so we generate everything, and then it ends up here in a materialized table in Google BigQuery at the moment. And so this is the data that we now want to get into Mixpanel. How can we sync the data from our data warehouse into Mixpanel? So we have two ways to achieve that. One is a synchronization of our data up into Mixpanel, and the other one is quite new, and it's called the Mixpanel Mirror product. How does sync work? The first thing is we load all new data into Mixpanel automatically, and it can happen every day, every week, or even down to every 5 minutes. So depending on how quick you need this data in Mixpanel. There's specific kind of data where it just makes sense to update it once a day. The important thing, what you really need to know, is the synchronization happens based on the timestamp. So it looks, when it does the synchronization job, it looks like, okay, what was like the last timestamp that we already got in the last import, and then it checks in the data warehouse for new timestamps from new events, and then it basically loads. So by that, it really makes sure that no duplicated events get loaded, and it's a pretty straightforward process. There are some things to really keep in mind. First of all, if you have all your events in one table and you want to introduce a new event because you just have modeled it. In our example, when you watched the video before, we didn't model subscription contracted and subscription expanded yet. If we now want to introduce this, and if we would have all the events in one table, then we introduce these new events, and they could even work historically because we model the data. We also have then contracted and expanded historically, but they could not load it by the Mixpanel synchronization because the historic events have old timestamps, and so Mixpanel would just ignore them. Only the new contract in Expanded would taking into account. This is the reason, so I already mentioned it in the last episode, this is the reason why I use single tables per event, because this allows me to introduce new events later on with this kind of method as well. Because now I can just introduce a new table, which is called subscription contracted, and then a new table with subscription expanded, and then I can just import them individually into Mixpanel. So this works in this case. But every time when you want to adapt something historically, this doesn't work. So for example, you might have a problem somewhere and you want to delete some kind of event data. This is not possible with this because what's already in the system is basically immutable, and so you cannot really remove it. The major difference now to the Mirror product is that it loads all changes of the data. And that's quite interesting. So first of all, Mirror is something really new. This was the announcement post, as you can see here. So it basically announced 3 months ago. And as far as I know, it's not public available, so you can sign up for early beta, early access, and you can test it out. The major difference of this is that in the end, we load all changes of the data. So it works a little bit like change data capture. If you work with databases, this is something you might already know. What it does, when it makes the synchronization job, it looks into everything that has been changed since the last run. And this then includes, of course, all new records, so all new events are coming in, but also things that have been changed for the past data. So if I delete some events, if I add new properties to an existing event, also for historic events in this kind of event table, it takes all of this into account. It creates a precise mirror, this is hence the name, of the data into Mixpanel. This is, I think, in the end, like where we all will end up, because this is the best way to really make sure that what you model in the data warehouse is also represented in a Mixpanel, that you don't come up with the question, oh, okay, do my changes actually being synchronized into Mixpanel? So you have a point less to think about. This really makes sense. But put it like this. For 95 of all use cases, the already existing synchronization works totally fine. And you will see it today, so we will use it in a second. And so you will see how this works. Definitely keep your eyes out for the new mirror function when it becomes generally available. So to see, okay, do we have actually maybe this 5% of use cases? So then it might be really something that you want to look into. Okay, so this is how we can do. But let's do it. Talking is nice, but showing is a lot better. What do we want to achieve? So we have a Mixpanel setup, and in this Mixpanel setup, we collect already the behavioral data. So let's have a quick look at it. So we go over here to the lexicon, and here we can see all the different kind of events that come in. What we track here is a classic whiteboard application. As you can see here, we have a lot of whiteboard typical events. So we have assets added, then the asset commented, and then of course we have a board created, board closed, deleted, presented, board shared, and so on. We already have something which is called subscription canceled and subscription created, because like I already added at least 2 events already to this kind of setup. We already mixed these 2 worlds with, let's say, this kind of data like asset added, which we collect directly from product usage into Mixpanel, and then the things that we load from Stripe here with subscription created and subscription canceled. And we now bring it all together. But let me show you how we do this. If you're in Mixpanel, you can go into project settings, because it's already available for you as well. The synchronization from the database account. If you even, let's say, you have a simple Mixpanel account, this is already available and you can already use it. When you go here into project settings, you have these 2 items here, and we start here. So I already created this because it's definitely not something so crazy to do. So I already connected to my BigQuery instance. What you have to do is when you create a new connection, then in the end, like Mixpanel gives you a command line command, and you run this in the Google Cloud and the Cloud Console. So just to know, so in the Cloud Shell to be precise. So it's here. So Mixpanel gives you the command, you run it here, and then Mixpanel has access to your BigQuery data, and you can pick the right Mixpanel project. So this is step 1 that you have to do. Step 2, we have to define which kind of data we want to get into it. Like here, we have subscription created already in there, and we want to add all the other kind of events. So let's do this together so you can see how it works. When I create, I can decide, do I want to have an event table or do I want to have a user table? We start out with the event tables. So we pick our source, then we have our data set. So this is the right one. And then what we want to add is like subscription canceled, because I think the entry in the lexicon was an old one. And then we have to define which kind of type is it. In this case, it's an event. It's not really ad spend data, but as you can see here, you could also add ad spend data into this, which we will not do in this kind of session. So then we have to define how we name the events. Where can we find the event name? So here it's pretty easy. So we have the event name in the activity column. The event time is which kind of timestamp we can use. So we just have one timestamp, so we use this one. And here we can already then see the preview, which is nice, so we can already see how it works. Distinct ID is our user ID that we want to use. And so here we have our customer, like the customer ID that we use. And then we also want to add some properties. Let's maybe quickly go back. Here we have this JSON field where we have all the different kind of property values in here. And so we want to use this. We just go here, add mapping, JSON properties. So it expects a JSON field. This is also like one of the reasons why I prepared it like this. And so here we can then add our JSON field. And as you can see here, now it really has changed. So it already like all the properties are visible, like subscription amount, subscription currency. Then we can define how we want to import it. As I said, it's time-based. We don't even have another option here. And then we can define the insert time. So for us, it makes sense to have the timestamp that we already use. Then we can even use an unique ID that we generate. So we generate a unique activity ID, so we can use it here. And then we can define the frequency. So let's say for me, daily is totally fine. And that's it. Now we can create everything. And now it already starts to sync up. It checks everything, and now the first synchronization job is running. As you can see here, it's already active and it's already ready. So it's pretty straightforward. We just imported 66,000 events, and we did it in 10 seconds. And so, of course, depending on how big your data is, it might take a little bit longer, but it's pretty fast and pretty straightforward. We did a full backfill here. We imported everything, and so now it's available. So we can now do the same thing with everything else. Again, I told last time, when you put everything into one event table, it's nice because you just have to do what we just do right now one time for all events and also for all future events. So all new events come in there automatically. But as I said already, just the new one. So if you model something with historic context, it doesn't work. This is the reason why we do this here. And let's maybe do another one. We need the renewed. And so we do the same thing. And this is the nice thing if you work with activity schema, at least like you don't really have to think about, because the values are always the same. So we select all the different kind of things that we need. And it's also nice that Mixpanel helps us here to just basically show you the columns that make sense based on type. So daily is fine. We create this one. All right, and then let's create the final one. Okay, and this is subscription ended. And the customer ID. And again, these are the properties. And that's it. So it took us, I think, now 2 minutes to import 4 events, and we have now 4 events that we can use. So let's have a quick check on them. We go to Insights, and then let's pick the one subscription created. And so here we can see we have subscription data here, even like for a longer time period, because like we imported a lot of things. So when we can look back, okay, that looks good. We have 3 months, we have 6 months. Yeah, actually it looks like that our import worked really well. That's great, because it didn't really took us long. First of all, the whole modeling did not that long, as you could see in the last video. And here now, like the synchronization of this is also like pretty straightforward. Let's move on to the next step. So I promise you we do 2 things. First of all, we did the sync, which was quick. And now you can see how you can sync all the different kind of data into Mixpanel. The second thing that we want to do is we want to create a dashboard tree. We had this concept, as you can see here. We covered this in the first video. We have a metric tree here. We discussed this in the first video, so where I explained it's definitely a simplistic one because like in the end, for the purpose of the video, we don't want to do a full stretch, but it already has a lot of interesting things in here. We have this part, which we naturally can cover with the stripe data, and then we have this part, which we can cover with the Mixpanel data, with the behavioral product data, which is already there. This is great. This is a good way to start, and it's a good way to build our reporting based on that so that we can at least show all these different kind of metrics, which we will do now in Mixpanel. How we can do this is we can basically take this approach of a metrics tree to the next level, which is quite obvious, and then it's a dashboard tree. In the dashboard tree, we take the same kind of hierarchy that we have before, and we represent this in our reporting as well, so that in the end, like, for people, they have the same kind of drill down impact. So they can start on the MRR level, which in the end, like, is very business relevant. It tells you something about like your monetary situation. But then you can move down and can say, okay, we want to understand our subscription because subscriptions are driving the MRR. And then we want to understand more about accounts. And then here, it's not about accounts, it's about churn. And so because these two impact definitely the subscriptions. And so with that, we have at least 3 levels of details where people can go into it. And the way how I usually then construct them, and we will construct one in a second, is I definitely want to also have some information about the totals of the different kind of metrics. Then I want to see how the development of this metric looks like. And then of course I want to see a breakdown of this metrics to understand, okay, do we maybe have interesting segments? And so this is what we want to achieve. So let's go back to Mixpanel and do that. We will start out with some reports. We have subscription created already, so that's good. We look at it maybe on a monthly base. And how can we create a dashboard in Mixpanel? So the first step is like we save something. We have to create a new board for this, and so let's call it, we can call it maybe tree and then MRR, because this is the first part of the dashboard tree that we want to create. And this one is, let's say, total new MRR. And so how we calculate this is, so of course we need subscription created, but subscription created doesn't really tell us something about the MRR. So what we need is, we need to aggregate a property, and then we need to sum up, and here we need to sum up the subscription amount. As we can see here now, so this is now the subscription amount, the new subscription amount that we generate each month. This is why it was important that we get the subscription amount as a property, because based on that, we can now bring everything into it. And so we have a total amount of MR now in the system, which is nice. So we can compare different kind of months with that. And so when we want to put it on the dashboard, we want to have it a little bit differently. We just want to have it first as a metric, because I said I'm interested in the total. And so let me save that. I want to see the developments. I save this as a new one, total MRR, and I call this TS for time series. Okay, so we have this one. And then maybe we are interested in some breakdown. So let's see. So we could, for example, we could now go for the interval. So I would take it here, let's say, in this case, the demo set is a little bit boring because like we just have monthly subscriptions. But in the end, like for example, if we start to introduce annual, then it would be definitely a valuable one. So let's save this as well and call it by interval. We have our first metrics. Let's do another one. Of course, we are also interested in churn. Churned in the end, of course, comes a little bit down to definition. When do you count something as churned? When the subscription has been ended or when the subscription has been cancelled. In this case, now we take ended because it definitely shows that something is over. Yep, here we have it, subscription ended. And so here, again, we are not interested in the subscription ended, but we are more interested in the amount that we are losing. So again, we do the sum of the amount. Okay, here we have the things. And so we can already save that now to our tree MRR model, and then total churned MRR. Now, of course, like renewed, because renewed is basically the heartbeat of our business. And so again, we are interested in the MRR. So we create the sum So subscription amount. And first we want to have the metric. So we save this on our dashboard. Okay, so total renewed MRR. Now the final one is because we also have our top metric. When we look back, just let's have a quick look here. Of course, like it's total MRR, and so in the end, like we have to construct this. Let's do that. We go in here again. We pick what we already did before. So we have subscription created. Again, we get the sum of all that we have. Then we take another one, which is subscription renewed. Apply the same calculation. Then we have ended. Okay, and again, I want to have the sum of all things. So here we can already, this is already good, and this is already part of an analyzer. So here what we can definitely see is right now we definitely have a problem. It's easy to spot. This is the nice thing why I like to work, let's say also like with event data, because it gives us already a timeline. Over, let's say, the last 30 days, we can definitely see that the new subscription coming in and the subscription churned are basically, yeah, on the same kind of level. In the end, we don't really grow. We definitely have a growth problem here. And so if we look back, so put it like this, in the past we definitely had a good month where we were doing a little bit better, but like before, so it does not really like, it's, so put it like this, it's definitely something where, let's say in the future, we should really now invest some time, because that looks a little bit worrying. Okay, so let's quickly construct a total MRR. So we use the formula for that. First of all, we take the twos that comes together, which is, so we have the MRR from subscription created plus the MRR of subscription renewed, and then of course we deduct the amount of subscription ended of it, and then we should get, yeah, so we get this as total MRR. This fits. Here we can already see in this month, in January, we were stronger in adding new subscriptions, then we lost them. And so this is also like why in the end we had a total MRR, which in the end, of course, naturally was higher than our renewed MRR because we were adding new ones. But here we can already see we are again flat, but we have the total MRR, so we can now save it as well to our dashboard. And so total MRR as a time series. Now with this we can build the dashboard. And when it comes down to building dashboards, it comes also like down a little bit to, let's say, personal preferences. So what I like to do is I like to construct these like this. So we have the total MRRs like this. Then we have the churned one. So we put these. So maybe let's drop this one because like breakdown doesn't really make sense. So again, like often I have one or two breakdowns here. So in the end that I run with 4 columns. But here in this time, it doesn't really make sense because we just have one plan. So we can put this and then we have renewed MRR. And so I might even would put renewed MRR up here because it makes more sense to do it like this. So we have new one, renewed, then we have churned, and then of course like at the top we will place the total MRR because this represents also our existing metric tree. This is step 1. This is where we have the MRR. I guess you get the message. I would quickly outline how we will go further. I would now maybe potentially create this one here as a subscription, which in like with the demo set is a bit boring because like we'll show the same kind of tendencies because like we have very not variable data here. So which I will do is I will take the accounts because like the accounts coming from a different data source, and so it's nice. So then we already have a structure that gives us something new. Let me see. So we can, for example, then add account created as an event, and then Let's save this. And so we create a new board because we want to create a dashboard tree. So it will be tree account, save. And so we will save this as new accounts. So we save this as new accounts, and there's also like a time series. And then let's quickly do this as save as new. Again, very important, always make sure that you hit the right save as new and so on, so that you don't overwrite the existing one, something that I do quite often. Again, so we have this, so this, can we create this? Then I'm not sure if we actually track if an account has been deleted or if it become inactive. Just let me quickly see this. No, we just have account created. So in the end, like this is what we would put into this dashboard. Let's have a quick look here. Account. This is definitely maybe something that we can do. So for example, maybe we can pull the account data from our application database into our data warehouse and now sync it up into Mixpanel as well to basically create the same kind of impact here. So the nice thing is what we can do now here is we can bring this together. And so what we have is we have now a nested dashboard. We can start out here with the MRR, and then here we can go down on the account level. So one level down. And this makes it really nice, especially like if you really work with the dashboard tree. It gives us a really nice hierarchy because like in the end, when we now would look into people getting value, quick recap. We first sync the data into Mixpanel. So in our case, we used the sync mode, which is already available in all Mixpanel accounts, so you can immediately use this yourself. This is the reason why I choose this. Mirror is something that will become available to more accounts over the course of the year, and I'm super excited with this one because, again, it gives me the possibility to change even my event model over time, and it basically incorporates all the different kind of changes into this. So what we did then is, so we then imported or synced up our new event data that we modeled before in our data warehouse. We could do this here, and as you can remember, it was really extremely straightforward, especially like if you already use a similar structure for all your events. It makes it really easy, so you don't really have to prep a lot of things because we prepped everything already before. Based on that, we then went into the reporting side and then created a dashboard tree where we wanted to cover, let's say, these different kind of areas. So we wanted to start out with MRR, and then we made another example. We did the accounts level. So now, let's say, as a next step, we would add the subscription here as well, and then we would look into churn. But especially like churn, I will keep until the next video, because in the next video, we then do the final thing that we were all looking for. Because honestly, what we just built here, yes, we could also build in our data warehouse. So we could load the data from Mixpanel down to our data warehouse, model the Stripe data, and then bring everything next to each other. So we didn't really added something extremely new here, but in the end, what we wanted to see in the next video is we want to see how we can see like interactions that are happening within the product, how they reflect then on the subscription data, that in the end, like we have a full sequence of users doing specific kind of user journeys where we can really understand, okay, how the usage of the product has an impact on the subscription. I hope this was interesting. Make sure that you subscribe. If you like the video, I would be extremely happy, and see you in the next video.